Alright YouTube, I'm not in much of a mood for sharing, but I'm working with my ball joint press on these U-joints, so I wanted to share it with you and how I did it. I'm trying not to go into too much detail, but essentially there's 4 bolts that go in here that holds that to the transfer case. And there's four bolts that go into there and 2 below that hold this to the back to the differential, okay? And this U-joint has already been pressed out. But basically all I did is I just used the existent hole in the ball joint press. The molded plastic goes through that center. There's molded plastic over here too. See, that's what they use instead of a snap ring on these ones, which it's actually an ingenious idea because all you got to do is press it out. You don't have to fight with those little snap rings. Oh. Take the cap off. This is where the bearing happens. That smells all yucky. Truthfully, it really smells terrible. At that point, it should be possible to remove the yoke. Now, I'm fairly certain this yoke is equal on both sides. I'm checking it for irregularity, but that's how I took it off, and I'm pretty sure it's totally symmetrical. There it goes, shorty. after lots of effort, lots of hours, struggling with this double cardan joint. I got the whole thing apart using that ball joint press, and I got it back together. The virtues of this thing, of course, incredible leverage in all the right places. You really aren't supposed to bang on these new caps with a hammer, because partly the problem is that when you're putting them in, the needles will fall out, and you don't know until this won't mate with the actual joint body, because there's a needle that's down in the bottom of the cap. This is the cap, and basically those needles can like fall out. Like if you drop this, them are all glued in, but yeah, there you go. Yeah, they're glued in with old grease, but yeah, they'll fall down into the bottom, and obviously then your bearing is really really wrecked. You can't actually locate the U-joint in there with these pins if that takes place, and you'll know because there'll be a little gap right here. But basically I just use that U-joint press like crazy, and also a brass punch, a piece of aluminum rod someone gave me, and a brass hammer. They were all coming in very handy. It's try not to mar this stuff. Really, I mean, it doesn't matter a whole lot as long as you don't mar the mating surfaces, but it still does matter. There's a ball inside this double cardan joint. This is what it looks like, and what a pain, my goodness. But I took this apart, and I can't really demonstrate it for the camera, but there's some looseness here. You know, I can like click this thing up and down, and clearly it's not greasable since it's buried in the middle in there, although it could be, but I'm sure that would be too much trouble. So yeah, I got grease zerks on the new parts, but there's no way you're ever going to be able to get to them when this is installed. I mean, just barely, but the size of the grease gun end is bigger than the space that you have to get in there, so it's kind of a joke. But they're multi-purpose U-joints. They're for other things too. So, but anyway, there you go. Now I'm gonna put it on my vehicle. I can confidently say it wouldn't have been possible without this U-joint press, or a ball joint press. It barely opens wide enough for some of the positions, but got this U-joint in pretty well. Yeah, this one had internal snap rings, and I forgot I had one in. I was trying to take the whole thing out and reinstall because I had the needles fell out of one of these, and you have to press both sides out to get it out. And so I was pressing the opposite direction, and that internal clip was still in there, and so as I was pushing, it was pushing the core, and the core pushed out the cap, and it just blew out the whole cap, and you could see all the needles from out here. So I took it back to the auto parts store, and they were generous enough to give me a faulty part warranty, even though it wasn't a faulty part. But I told them what happened. It's better to just be honest, and then at least you're not gonna stand the chance of having somebody accuse you of lying, because yeah, lying's not necessary. It's a $15 part, but and even if $15 is a lot to you, telling the truth is still going to be better. But these internal rings, they're a little tricky to get in because there's rust on these flat surfaces, right? And this had the plastic here, so that was all exposed where these rings go, flat against the inside here, and then of course inside here and the other side as well. But cleaning off that rust is a key part of this. If you don't clean off that rust, those internal rings won't fit. And likewise up here, except for these ones are a little bit more forgiving. But what I do is I put a snap ring in there, and then I'll take my pliers and I'll just spin it around. I'll grab it, spin it, and then as I spin it, it'll clean out a lot of the rust and crap that's in there, because it's a perfect fit for that slot. Just a tiny bit smaller than the slot. Basically a perfect fit. But the whole joint moves, so you can see when this part goes up, that part goes down, and that is what it is, and then left and right, and that is what that is supposed to do. So now the trying process of reinstalling these bolts that go in here. You can't run them with any kind of a socket, so you basically have to use, I guess you could use a ratcheting wrench, but I'm going to use a regular combo wrench because I want to get better at using them. And then over here on this end, these are Allens, but the ideal tool, you know, they used to be Torx, and the only way to get them with the Torx would be to have a long Torx that come out to here and on a socket, and I don't have that. So I replaced them with Allens, because Allens you can turn with a well, let's see, yeah, you can turn Allens with a ball end Allen, which is easier to get access with. So someday, once I get my proper long ball end Allens, that'll be a lot easier to get out. But whoever works on it, if it's somebody else, they'll be mad at me because it's supposed to be Torx. So I'm going to put this baby back in. So if you guys are going to do any U-joint jobs, if you've never done it before, prepare to be angry for a little while. But you'll figure it out if you really want to. And I really wanted this. I could have bought a propeller shaft for $200, but with all the joints, everything already pre-installed, no time basically. Just go to the store, get it, pop it in, whatever removal and installation time is. But it's wasteful. It uses a lot of materials, manufacturing energy. It's just bad practice to me. Even though you can do it, I'd much rather use fewer parts, less steel, and frankly, it's not that I care overly much about these types of things, but it's more environmentally conscious because a great deal of energy and materials are burned, and pollution and so on in the manufacturing process. So the less parts you use, the better it is for the environment. So automotive manufacturing is a big thing. But anyways, I just want to let you guys know that you can do it too, and don't give up. You can do it. You can get those parts off. You can get the new ones on. You just have to really devote yourself to it. I spent 8 hours yesterday. I've done U-joints before, and this double Cardan was a little bit too much for me. I oversimplified it in my mind, and I allowed it to overwhelm me just by its complications. It's not that complicated, but it's complicated enough that if you don't have a good foresight on what you're doing, it's going to end up being you just feel like you're over your head. But voila, there it is. Take it easy, YouTube.